She strode into the courthouse, a government official cloaked in quiet resolve, unnoticed yet unyielding. Beneath her calm exterior burned 30 years of buried truths, ready to erupt. Today, she would shatter her silence. A corrupt officer, smug in his power, tries to degrade her before a packed courtroom, dismissing her as just another obstacle. He's about to learn he's made a fatal miscalculation. She isn't just a woman. She's his new commander, here to dismantle his world. What unfolds is a breathtaking clash you won't forget. Brace yourself. The ending will stun you. Before we plunge into this saga, tell us, what time is it where you are? And where are you watching from? Share in the comments below. We're eager to hear your stories too.
Outside the Marion County Courthouse in Salem, Oregon, the air hung thick, as if holding its breath before a storm. The sky churned with gray clouds tinged with gold, hovering over marble columns like whispers of secrets ready to break free. It was just past 8 a.m., and the streets pulsed with the restless energy of a new day. Inside, beyond the metal detectors and jaded security guards, a different force simmered, one no one saw coming. Dr. Eleanor Grace Thompson crossed the threshold with a steely calm born not of pride, but of survival. At 62, her sharp eyes and soft voice belied her strength, her navy blue suit neither lavish nor tattered, chosen with purpose. Her gray-streaked hair was pinned tightly, a symbol of her restraint. In her grip, a worn leather folder, its spine cracked, edges softened by time, carried a weight heavier than anyone in that courthouse could imagine. It was the same folder she'd clutched for nearly 2 decades. Though unrecognized by the bustling staff, it held the undeniable power of truth. At first, she drew no eyes. The clerk, glued to his phone at the reception desk, didn't look up. An assistant, brushing crumbs from her blazer in a hurried dash, paid her no mind. Even the uniformed officers at the entrance barely glanced at her visitor's badge. That suited Eleanor perfectly. She thrived in the shadows, for now. With silent determination, her low heels clicked softly on the marble floors as she headed for the main elevator. She needed no map. Years ago, under far darker circumstances, she'd etched these halls into her memory. The creak of the 4th-floor stairwell, the uneven tile by courtroom 3B, the way sunlight slanted through the east windows. At precisely 9 a.m., she wasn't here for memories. She was here to settle a score and rewrite history. Upstairs, a security guard lounged against the wall, arms folded, his gaze a mix of boredom and disdain. Eleanor offered a curt nod, but he barely acknowledged her. She didn't care. Her mission didn't need their approval. It never had. The Office of Internal Affairs had sent her to scrutinize courthouse security protocols and staff conduct. On paper, it was a standard audit, part of a statewide review of judicial facilities. Off the record, it came with a knowing glance and an unsigned envelope from a high-ranking DOJ official, a woman Eleanor had once guided, who understood exactly what this place had stolen from her years ago. When the assignment landed in her hands, Eleanor didn't flinch. She knew this courthouse better than anyone in the department, better than most who still worked its halls. That knowledge was why she had to return. The elevator groaned open, and she stepped onto the 3rd floor. The hallway stretched empty, save for a janitor rolling a mop bucket. The air carried the sharp tang of floor wax and aging paper. She passed courtroom 3B, pausing briefly, her eyes lingering on the heavy oak doors. Their closing thud, a sound that once trapped her, echoed in her mind. Her pulse quickened, but only for a moment. She pressed on, her gaze unwavering. At the administrative wing, she approached a small reception desk. The young woman behind it looked up, startled by her presence. "Can I assist you?" she asked, her tone cautious but sharp. "I'm here to review security protocols this week," Eleanor replied, her voice smooth as polished stone. "Dr. Eleanor Thompson, DOJ clearance. My credentials are in the file sent yesterday." The receptionist tapped her keyboard, eyes narrowing as she scanned the system. Seconds later, she straightened, a flicker of respect in her posture. "Oh, yes, ma'am. I didn't know you'd be here today." "No issue," Eleanor said. "You're early." A faint smile curved Eleanor's lips. "I prefer to see things when no one's prepared for me." The woman gave a nervous chuckle and handed over a visitor's pass. Eleanor clipped it to her blazer and glided down the hall, her steps deliberate, unhurried. She wasn't here for theatrics, but if conflict sought her out, as it often did, she was ready. She turned a corner into the first security observation room. Monitors lined the wall, flickering with grainy images of the courthouse, entrances, corridors, stairwells, holding cells. A lone officer slouched at the desk, boots propped up, flipping through a sports magazine. He glanced up, irritation flashing across his face. "You can't be here without an escort," he growled, squinting at her. Eleanor's eyes held steady. "DOJ cleared me. Your supervisor has the memo." He leaned back, chewing a toothpick, sizing up her badge. Not used to people strolling in like they own the joint. She didn't bite. Instead, she stepped past him, inspecting the equipment, her pen scratching precise notes in a leather-bound notebook. He muttered something low, but didn't push further. None of them, the receptionist, the guard, the officer with his feet up, grasped the truth. Eleanor wasn't just auditing systems. She was studying them, the people who thought they ran this place. And if her instincts were right, they'd never forget her after today. Outside, the clouds grew heavier, dimming the morning light. A distant rumble of thunder hinted at trouble. Inside, a different tempest brewed, silent, calculated, and forged over decades. Deputy Marshal Carl Bennett despised surprises, especially those that arrived with an unshakable authority he couldn't pin down. For over 20 years, he'd guarded this courthouse, honing a knack for spotting those who thought they outranked him. People who walked too boldly, spoke too sharply, looked at him like he was beneath them or, worse, unafraid. Today, the sight of that older black woman in a navy blue suit set his nerves ablaze. He'd clocked her the moment she stepped off the elevator. Nothing about her screamed for attention. No flashy jewelry, no theatrics. Just a steady, quiet stride that demanded no permission and declared its own power. That's what gnawed at him. She didn't glance his way, didn't acknowledge his presence, yet somehow made him feel exposed, not in a way he could shrug off. It wasn't defiance, it was worse, indifference, as if he were irrelevant, as if she held a secret he'd never guess. He probed quietly, masking his questions as casual chatter over burnt coffee in the break room. Word was, she was a new inspector from Internal Affairs, last name Thompson, no first name yet. That alone soured his mood. He loathed IA with a fire that outburned his failed marriages. Clipboard cops, he called them. Too weak for real streets, too smug to grasp real danger, always hunting for scapegoats to prop up their paychecks. But this Thompson woman didn't fit the mold. She wasn't cocky or loud. She wasn't even confrontational. Her quiet control made her a threat, like she could command a room without raising her voice. By late morning, Bennett prowled the West Wing corridor, agitation simmering. Thompson hadn't made demands, called meetings, or requested an escort. That unnerved him most. She wasn't just observing, she was dissecting. He spotted her again near 11 a.m., standing by the fire exit stairwell, scribbling in a leather notebook with maddening patience, as if time bent to her will. Her deliberate movements grated on him, each step calculated, as if planned months in advance. He approached without thinking, shoulders squared, chin high. She didn't look up. You lost? He snapped. She turned slowly, her eyes locking onto his, unflinching. Number are you? The words hit like a blade, swift and icy. Bennett's jaw clenched. He drew a slow breath. This area's off limits to civilians. I'm not a civilian, she shot back, steady as stone. You know that. You're wandering without clear credentials, he growled. People are starting to talk. They'll get their answers, she said, returning to her notes. In time. Her composure fueled his rage. She wasn't intimidated, wasn't groveling, wasn't even trying to appease him. You've got an attitude, he hissed under his breath. She looked up, her gaze piercing. And you've got a problem with perception. He stepped closer, blocking the narrow hallway. You think a badge and a clipboard let you own this place? I don't think, she said, voice flat. I know. He glared, nostrils flaring. Watch your tone. I'm watching everything, she replied. A tense silence crackled between them. Then softly she added, I've read your file, Officer Bennett. I know your write-ups, your dismissals, your sealed records, and I know who covered for you. His fists tightened. She leaned in, eyes never leaving his. Careful, she whispered. This place has more cameras now. He was speechless, his pulse hammering. She stepped around him, gliding past like a ghost, as if the confrontation never happened. Bennett stood frozen, his breath shallow. For the first time in years, he felt exposed, not physically, but in every other way that mattered. This woman hadn't just challenged him. She'd cracked the armor he'd worn for decades, and she hadn't even raised her voice. What his pride blinded him to was their history. 30 years ago, he was younger, brasher, untouchable. She was a 20-something state compliance analyst, bright-eyed and idealistic, tasked with auditing courthouse records. Their paths crossed one night in the archives hallway. He didn't remember, but she never forgot. She'd approached him with a folder, seeking answers about missing incident logs. He'd laughed, tossed a crude remark, then pinned her against the wall. Not enough to leave marks, but enough to instill fear. Her complaint vanished. Her reassignment request was quietly granted. No investigation, no follow-up. She was erased. Until now. Back then, he saw her as a nobody, a nuisance, a woman he could dismiss. But she'd memorized his face, his voice, the sting of his aftershave, the name on his uniform. She'd climbed back, step by grueling step, through promotions, trainings, and case files, each a defiance of that night. Not vengeance, at first, just survival. But now, it was something greater, and he stood face to face with the storm he'd sown, oblivious to its origins. The courtroom felt colder than Eleanor recalled, a chill that sank into her bones, sharper than mere air conditioning or marble floors. She entered quietly, folder in hand, her composure a shield. She wasn't here for drama, just to review procedures, observe silently, and leave. That was the plan. But as she slipped through the staff-only side entrance, a voice thundered across the room. Who the hell let you in here? Heads whipped around. The judge froze mid-sentence. The stenographer's fingers hovered over her keys. Eleanor halted, unshaken, instantly recognizing the voice, now roughened by years and bitterness. Bennett. He stood by the jury box, arms crossed, his face twisted with contempt. He didn't wait for her reply. Back off. This area's for authorized personnel only. She raised her folder. I am authorized. He stepped forward, his boots pounding the floor like a war drum. No badge, no clearance, just waltzing in like you own this place. I'm here to observe, she said, her voice firm yet measured. Your supervisor has my documents. I don't see a badge, he sneered. I see someone who doesn't belong. Before she could respond, he struck, slapping the folder from her hands, Papers flew like scattered ashes, weeks of meticulous work strewn across the floor. The room echoed with the sound. A collective gasp rose, faint but sharp. Eleanor knelt slowly to retrieve a page. Bennett didn't stop. He kicked her leather tote, sending it crashing into a bench, then shoved her, both hands to her chest, no hesitation. The courtroom gasped louder, the air thick with shock. Eleanor stumbled, her heel catching the floor's edge. She fell, the impact jarring, her back slamming against the tile with a heavy thud. Her breath fled in a rush. For a heartbeat, the room stood still. No one spoke, no one moved. The judge was silent, the clerks frozen. No one offered aid. It wasn't just the act, it was Bennett's brazen certainty, his lack of fear, and the room's complicity. He loomed over her, chest heaving, eyes alight with fury. "You people always think you can do whatever you want," he spat, venom lacing his words. "Always pushing, acting like you're above us." Eleanor looked up, her face a mask of calm, lips tight. No tears, no trembling, just a steady gaze, like she was watching a beast's final snarl. "Get up!" he roared. "Get out before I drag you out in cuffs!" He turned to the room. "This area's restricted. No one enters unless they're court staff. And she," he jabbed a finger at her, "ain't." The room remained paralyzed. Eleanor rose slowly, brushing dust from her skirt, her hand steady despite a faint tremor. She gathered her papers, each rustle deafening in the silence. The judge finally stirred. "Officer Bennett," he began, voice wavering, but a commanding shout cut through. "Is she here?" A man in a crisp gray suit stormed through the doors, flanked by 2 U.S. Marshals. His eyes swept the room, locking onto Eleanor with a nod of respect. "Doctor?" "Thompson," he announced, voice ringing clear. "The Attorney General's on the line, eager to speak before your formal review. And congratulations, your interim appointment is confirmed." The room erupted in gasps, a wave of shock rippling through. The judge leaned forward, stunned. A pen slipped from the stenographer's hand. Bennett staggered back, his face paling. Eleanor stood, not with triumph or malice, but with the quiet grace of someone who'd earned every step she took. She straightened her jacket, retrieved her bag, and walked toward the man at the back. She didn't glance back, but every eye followed her, some with awe, others with shame, a few with dread. Bennett stood mute, abandoned by defenders. She paused at the door, turning slightly, her eyes not on him, but on the judge, still frozen at his bench. "This isn't about who belongs here," she said, her voice soft but piercing. "It's about who's overstayed their welcome." Then she was gone. The air shifted, the silence now heavy with the weight of what was coming. In the elevator to the 4th floor, Eleanor stood beside the U.S. Marshal, hands clasped, folder tucked under her arm. She spoke little. Her eyes said enough. She wasn't shaken or humiliated. She'd faced worse and risen stronger. Bennett's actions below only confirmed the rot still festering in these walls. They reached the executive wing, where plush carpet replaced tile and framed articles touted justice and leadership. Eleanor passed them without a glance. The marshal knocked on a frosted glass door and held it open. Inside, a sleek conference room awaited, the Attorney General's face on a screen, live from D.C. "Dr. Thompson," she said warmly, "we saw what happened. Are you okay? Further business goes through the court administrator." James nodded slowly, then reached into his coat, pulling out a small black wallet, the kind that carried authority, not cash. He flipped it open, letting the badge and ID catch the light. "I understand," he said, his voice calm but unyielding. "But I'm James Carter, senior investigator with the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice." The words didn't boom, they burned, shifting the air like a spark in a dry field. The clerk's hand stilled. The bailiff straightened, eyes narrowing. Judge Ellison blinked, not in shock, but as if recalculating every moment of the morning. The silence crackled, alive with unspoken questions. James pressed on, his tone steady, deliberate. "I was late today because of an urgent federal case on human trafficking," he said. "I didn't mention it earlier. I don't use my title to sidestep process. But I do believe in fairness. And what I saw here today raises serious red flags." The silence grew heavy, electric. Judge Ellison's eyes held his, her composure intact but fraying at the edges. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice slower now, "if you believe there's been a procedural issue, file a complaint with the State Judicial Board." "I'm already documenting," James replied, lifting his notebook slightly. "But this isn't just about me. It's about the pattern. Unequal treatment of late arrivals. No review of evidence. Punishment without question." The judge's jaw tightened, her hands clasping harder, betraying tension she couldn't hide. "This court values fairness," she said, but the words sounded hollow, like a script read too many times. "I know," James said, his voice a quiet blade. "And I'm here to make sure everyone in power respects it." He nodded once, tucked the badge away, and turned to leave, his footsteps echoing in a room that suddenly felt too small. As he walked out, he felt the weight of eyes, not accusing, but watching, aware that something had shifted. The clerk's typing resumed, softer now, as if afraid to disturb the moment. A young law student by the door lowered her notebook, her eyes wide with something like awe. Outside, the hallway felt sharper, the fog lifted, the light hitting the tiles like a promise. James had walked in to fight a ticket. Now he was carrying something bigger, a truth that refused to stay buried. James stepped from the courthouse into the blazing midday sun, its heat peeling back shadows, exposing everything in its glare. The air pressed warm against his skin, laced with blooming spring and the faint grit of old pavement. He crossed the lot slowly, his boots thumping softly, his mind racing, piecing together the morning's wait and what it demanded next. Inside his truck, he shut the door, the silence wrapping him like a held breath. The courthouse loomed behind, its routine unchanged, but he was no longer part of its rhythm. He pulled out his phone, opened a secure folder, and typed with swift precision, "Filing report." Suspected courtroom bias, racial disparities, hostile tone. Full documentation to follow. The message went to his assistant at the DOJ field office, where systems were ready for moments like this. To the room he'd left behind, he was just a man with a ticket. They didn't know they'd just crossed a federal civil rights investigator with a memory as long as his mandate. He slid the phone back into his coat, catching the clerk's glance from the courthouse window. Brief, hesitant, maybe an unspoken apology. He filed it away. Silent allies often emerged when the moment demanded. Outside, the wind kicked up, shaking the trees lining the courthouse lawn, their shadows dancing like warnings across the ground. James leaned forward, elbows on his knees, studying the bench where Ellison sat. Her posture seemed stiffer now, as if she sensed the tide turning. He wondered if she knew who he was. He wondered if it mattered. From his briefcase, he pulled a thin folder. Not evidence, but power. His credentials, agency ID, case files he oversaw. He stared at it, then closed it. Not yet. Timing was everything, and right now he needed to watch, let the system reveal itself. It always did. The courtroom doors creaked as a latecomer in a gray blazer slipped in, unhurried, unpunished. James noted the time, 9:52 a.m. The judge didn't blink. The disparity wasn't subtle. It was blatant, a rule bent for some and ironclad for others. James exhaled, letting the moment settle, feeling purpose take shape. This wasn't about his fine anymore. It was about a system that thrived on selective blindness, and he was done letting it hide. Back at his office, the light cut sharper through the windows, and his desk became a war room. Papers, case files, a battlefield of truth. He opened his DOJ laptop, logged into the secure system, and began drafting the memorandum. Annotated notes, time-stamped photos, transcript excerpts, cross-referenced rulings from the past year. Each click built a clearer picture, one no one could dismiss. The email's subject line stared back at him. Urgent. Discriminatory practices. Lincoln County Court. He hit send, exhaling not from relief, but from momentum. The fight was on. His phone rang at 7:36 a.m. the next morning, Sarah Thompson's name flashing on the screen. "I read your report," she said, her voice sharp. "This isn't just a bad day, it's systemic." "I know," James replied, "and I don't think it's Ellison's first time." Sarah paused. "We need to play this smart but hard. I'm alerting the Judicial Review Commission and assigning a team. Get everything. Statements, case comparisons, anything that proves pattern over fluke." "On it," James said, already listing names. Attorneys, clerks, community voices who'd seen this before. That afternoon, Emma, a junior analyst, rushed in with a tablet. "This just dropped," she said, showing a blog post titled, "When Justice Looks Away, A Morning in Lincoln Court." A law student's raw account of James's stand, now shared thousands of times. He read the final line. "I watched a man stand up when everything screamed to sit down. That's the courage I want to carry." James leaned back, a quiet smile breaking through. The story wasn't his anymore. It was alive, moving on its own. By week's end, James sat in a packed library meeting room, the air heavy with unspoken stories. Residents, students, defenders, and clergy filled the creaking chairs, their voices rising. Raw, real, ready. A woman shared her $800 taillight fine, her receipts ignored. An older man spoke of a judge who never looked up from his name. James listened, his pen moving, capturing not just facts, but pain, truth, the weight of being unseen. Elena Martinez, the clerk, approached him later, her hands trembling as she handed over a notebook. "I've been writing it down, cases, comments, moments that felt wrong," she said. James took it with care, nodding. "You've done enough," he said. "I'll handle it from here." Her nervous smile flickered, a spark of defiance breaking through. The next day, James returned to the courthouse, silent in the gallery, watching the patterns unfold. A black defendant fined $300 for parking, a white one warned. A Latina's plea dismissed, while a white man got leniency. He logged it all, timestamps, codes, proof. That night, an email arrived, no subject, from a woman in court that day. "I saw you stand up. Thank you." Attached was a video, shaky but clear, capturing his badge reveal, the judge's pause, the room's shift. James saved it, his heart steady but heavy. The truth was growing legs, and he was no longer alone. The story broke wide by Monday, seeping into local news like fire through dry grass. James laced his shoes as the TV flashed courthouse footage, a voiceover noting, "Allegations of bias spark DOJ inquiry." His name wasn't out, not yet, but the words were, spreading fast. At the hotel cafe, people scrolled headlines, their eyes lingering on Judge Ellison's photo. James grabbed his coffee and stepped into the wind, the town unchanged, but humming with new energy. Sarah called, her voice electric. "Your report's a bombshell. The commission's moving in. Media's not letting go. You ready for the spotlight?" "I've been ready," James said, his voice a quiet vow. That afternoon, in a diner booth, papers spread like a battle plan. A man approached with a worn envelope. "Same thing happened to me," he said, handing over his story. James nodded. "We need every voice." By day's end, dozens had come forward. Emails, letters, videos, each a crack in the system's armor. A woman shared her story on a podcast. A man posted a video, raw with emotion, about his son's humiliation in court. James walked the streets that night, the glow of storefronts reflecting off wet pavement, the courthouse dark, but no longer silent. The reporter's voicemail waited. "We want your side, Mr. Carter." But he wasn't ready for cameras. This needed evidence, not headlines. At midnight, Elena texted, "They're asking questions at the office. I said nothing." James replied, "Stay steady." The silence was breaking, and he was leading it, one truth at a time. A week later, the courthouse felt alive, its rhythm off-kilter. Clerks whispered, judges hesitated, Brooks vanished. On leave, they said. But James knew better. The system was turning on itself. In a community meeting, voices rose, raw, unfiltered, demanding to be heard. James listened, his presence a quiet anchor. "I believe you," he said, and the room stilled, shoulders lifting, pen scratching. He spoke of bias hidden in routine, of voices silenced by assumption, of a system that looked fair, but crushed, some harder than others. Elena handed him an envelope, old memos, clerk notes, emails never meant to see light. "It's about time," she said. James took it, knowing the risk she'd taken. That night, rain drumming the window, he filed each piece, building a case that couldn't be ignored. By noon, her inbox overflowed. Former staff, temps, even a retired interpreter, all sharing tales of intimidation, silence, and dismissal, always tied to one name. Their weary tone hit her hardest, not the volume, but the resignation, as if they doubted anyone would listen. But Eleanor read every word, building not just a case, but a cornerstone. At 3 p.m., she faced her own file from 1993, the one that vanished, unearthed from a misfiled DOJ server. She'd waited to open it until now. Her statement detailed Bennett shoving her after she questioned sealed logs, time, place, words recorded. 2 witnesses' names crossed out, a red stamp, no further action. A note in faded ink, too green, emotional bias. She set it aside, her face unreadable, the pain now a controlled burn. She wasn't angry, she was armed. That evening, as the courthouse emptied, she stayed, connecting dots. A knock broke her focus. Michael, hesitant. He's downstairs, Bennett near 3B, just standing there. She didn't ask why. Grabbing her blazer, she walked down, steps slow, deliberate, letting him feel the weight. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, staring blankly. Seeing her, he straightened. "Got a minute?" he asked. "No," she said. 5 minutes. He gave a bitter laugh. "Typical. You were always good with time," she said. "Nothing." "I hear things," he said. "Rumors. Old files being dug up." "Not rumors," she countered. "Records." He looked away, jaw tight. "That's all in the past." "No," she stepped closer. "It's now. You ensured that when you touched me yesterday." His face flushed. "That wasn't personal. I didn't know. I knew," she cut in. "I knew you. And you proved it again." He stood silent, words failing. "Go home, Officer Bennett," she said. "Tomorrow's heavy." He didn't argue or apologize, just walked away. She watched, then turned the other way. Night fell over Salem, shadows creeping over marble. Eleanor wasn't chasing the past. She was forging a future where it couldn't hide. She barely slept, the storm inside her raging, not in the sky, but in systems, names, stains left uncleaned. Her kitchen table held an open file. Confidential. Misconduct logs. 2008 to 2021. The label was meaningless. Nothing stayed hidden now. She read not for facts, but for voices silenced in those pages. Her anger was sharp, precise. Before dawn, she was back, reviewing old logs when Michael arrived. "You go home?" he asked. She didn't answer. Rest was for after truth. A secure envelope arrived. No sender. Inside, a 1993 transfer memo with her name, stamped reassigned. A grainy photo showed her against a wall, Bennett's hand on her shoulder, his stance menacing. She stared, fingers grazing its edges. "Where'd this come from?" she asked. "Left at security," Michael said. "No one saw who." She nodded. The camera they'd claimed was broken had captured it. Proof someone had kept. "Scan it," she said. "Log it." From her window, she saw the street alive with routine. How many had sat in that courtroom, swallowing fear to keep jobs, choosing silence over memory? That afternoon, she faced the oversight panel. 7 stiff figures in neutral suits. She laid out the pattern. Complaints, cover-ups, silenced voices. "This isn't just Bennett," she said. "He's the symptom. The disease is systemic permission for harm." "Your recommendation?" a panelist asked. "Bennett's a liability," she said. "Administrative leave, reopen all his complaints, public audit findings." Silence fell. "That's bold," one said, adjusting his glasses. "It's the minimum," she replied. "People remember their pain," she added. "Ignoring it makes us guilty." Lorraine, the civilian rep, lingered after. "Will this hold?" she asked. "If it doesn't, I'll make it," Eleanor said. That night, she scanned her 1993 report, her handwritten truth, locked out of the system. She signed it. Eleanor Grace Thompson. The weight in her chest shifted, placed into a system that could no longer deny it. The ethics hearing dawned still and tense. Outside, Salem buzzed, but the courthouse braced for impact. Eleanor adjusted her blazer, her eyes carrying 30 years of silenced truth. Today, the truth would speak for itself. She walked the corridors, staff parting in reverence. The courtroom was reconfigured. Cameras lined the walls, reporters poised, officials and advocates seated, even retired judges drawn by rumors. The air crackled with nervous energy, not just for one man's fate, but for the walls that might crumble. At 10 a.m., Eleanor entered, folder in hand, heels echoing. She set her materials down, nodding to the panel. Bennett sat in the third row, flanked by attorneys, his scowl replaced by uncertainty. He'd banked on containment, not exposure. Eleanor began with hard data, charts, case numbers, complaints against Bennett, most buried. She exposed mismatched logs, missing footage, routine lapses. She built the case methodically, letting facts roar. The room was wrapped. Then she turned. "One case remains," she said. In 1993, a compliance officer filed a complaint. Ignored, reassigned, erased. That was me. Gasps echoed. Cameras flashed. Bennett's head sank. At 24, I found irregularities and was cornered, pushed, silenced. She held up the photo, projecting it, a frozen moment of her fear. This arrived 2 days ago. The room stilled, the image a haunting truth. "The system didn't fail me," she said. "It enabled him for 30 years. Questions followed, some probing, one asking why now. "I never left," she said. "I waited for ears ready to hear." Retribution? Number clarity. Accountability. A former clerk spoke, recalling Bennett's rage at 19. Eleanor noted it all. The room transformed into a space of reckoning. No verdict came, but the outcome was clear. Bennett didn't sleep, haunted by Eleanor's testimony looping on TV. His name, once a shield, now sparked disgust. He remembered her, her flinch, her silenced voice. He'd crushed her hope, and now she was his undoing. The board's ruling came. Immediate leave, badge surrendered, every complaint reopened. Bennett left silently, his steps heavy. On the steps, he passed Eleanor. "You remembered," he said. "I never forgot," she replied. Another envelope arrived. Internal memos. Suppressed cases. Someone was feeding her truth. She and Michael found a second officer's cover-ups. She demanded full DOJ archive access, targeting the system, not just Bennett. This was never about one man, she told Michael. That evening, rain tapped her office windows. Her wall was a web of documents, a map of decay. Her resolve hardened, not for revenge, but for excavation. Monday's DOJ call heard her findings. "Does this go beyond Salem?" an official asked. "It's national," she said. "This courthouse is just the spark." She requested investigators, analysts, and media backing. That night, The Woman Who Wouldn't Stay Silent aired, Eleanor's words on systems and pain resonating. Messages poured in. People who thought no one saw, now feeling heard. By Wednesday, the courthouse hummed differently. Eyes met hers with respect or fear. Courtroom 3B was just a room now, its power stripped. New complaints flooded in. A judge, a janitor, interns, all unheard until now. She and Michael built a timeline, each memo a brushstroke of neglect. Her proposal demanded a 30-year audit, civilian panels, and reform. For Bennett, she called for decertification, benefit termination, and testimony. Not punishment, but clarity. At 4 p.m., Bennett appeared, disheveled, no uniform. "I remember," he said. "I knew what I did." "It waited for you," Eleanor replied. He confessed, not for forgiveness, but for the record. "Write it all," she said. "Every silence, every cover-up." He left, and she finished her call for a misconduct registry, a shield against silence. At the press conference, the lobby brimmed with journalists, advocates, staff. Eleanor spoke without notes, her words heavy with truth. "We cannot fix what we won't face," she said, unveiling reforms, panels, protections, an open archive. The applause was reverence, not celebration. That night, she walked the courthouse's empty halls, its creaks familiar, but powerless. She packed, a chipped mug, a photo, a faded pen, leaving her badge behind. Michael asked if she'd stay. "No," she said. "The work must lead, not me." A DOJ citation for restoring the record went into a closet. In Portland, she passed her childhood home, smiling, moving on. In D.C., she consulted quietly, shunning fame. Her story became a guide, not a legend, forcing systems to face their truth. Eleanor's tale isn't just drama, it's a mirror. Silence delays justice. Injustice isn't always loud. It festers in indifference, in systems that silence. But she showed it's never too late to speak. She stood for every silenced voice, rising not in rage, but in truth. To our viewers, especially those in their later years, your stories matter. Your voice matters. You're not alone. If Eleanor's story stirs you, like, share, subscribe. These aren't just stories. They're lessons, our legacy. Keep the truth alive. Keep listening. Ensure no one feels invisible again. Thank you. You belong.